The atmosphere in the private dining suite reeked of old wealth the night I turned 27. Crystal flutes chimed, imported scents hung heavy, and laughter echoed, though none of it was mine. My grandfather raised his glass, a distinct smirk playing on his lips. Tell me, Evelyn, have you decided how to allocate your $3.4 million inheritance? The universe seemed to lurch sideways. I blinked rapidly, trying to clear the fog. What inheritance? The silverware fell silent. My mother froze, her hand suspended in the air. My father swallowed hard, looking like he was choking on a diamond. Grandpa remained perfectly serene. Where did the capital vanish to? His inquiry sliced through the tension like a scalpel. In the heavy quiet, beneath the imported chandeliers and plastered grins, I understood this wasn't a party. It was a trial. My name is Evelyn Hart. Before that evening, I thought I knew my lineage. I was raised to believe dignity meant silence. Smile politely. Never pry. And absolute omerta regarding finances. I was surviving in Chicago now, miles away from their manicured lawns and waxed sedans, freelancing from a shoebox studio in Logan Square. The paint flaked, the radiator clanked, but I owned that space. I spent evenings designing logos while the L train rattled the windows, coffee turning cold next to final notices. My parents, Richard and Eleanor, resided in Highland Park. 5 bedrooms, a heated pool, a Range Rover each. We spoke, but never about substance. Calls started with, "How is business?" and ended before I could respond. The last surprise they gave me was at my university commencement. I crossed the podium gripping $70,000 in debt and a degree I earned solo. They embraced me, offered a heavy box, and beamed. "We are impressed." Inside was a textbook, Wealth Management for Beginners. I grinned for the camera. Later, I sobbed over a dorm sink, realizing I was on my own. Still, I kept grinding. I paid my landlord, skipped lunches, and grabbed every gig available. When peers shared beach selfies, I shrugged it off. Someday, I whispered. Someday, I would earn the right to exhale. 1 week prior to my birthday, my director summoned me into his glass-walled office. His expression told the story before he uttered a word. "Apologies, Evelyn. Restructuring." I packed my cardboard box, rode the L train home, and collapsed on the futon with Sarah, my roommate, my rock. The only stability I'd known for 2 years. "Your folks will step up, surely?" she ventured. I let out a dry, hollow chuckle. "They'll probably send me a link to a coupon site." That evening, I dialed them regardless. "Mom, I was let go." "Oh. That is unfortunate, sweetie," she replied, typing loudly on the other end. "You will adapt. You always manage." "I am behind on bills, Mom. I don't know how." "Well, perhaps this is a lesson in frugality. Anyway, we booked a table for your birthday. Ilenia, 7:30. Punctuality, please." "Mom, that tasting menu is $400. She giggled. "Stop being miserly, Evelyn. It is a celebration. Wear something elegant." The connection cut before I could argue. I stared at my silhouette in the blank television. Exhausted gaze, frayed cuffs, spirit fading. "400 a plate," I murmured. "That is 3 weeks of groceries." Sarah peeked up from her book. "You can skip it." "No, I can't. In this clan, declining an invite is treason." So, I marked the calendar in red ink. The way a convict marks their execution date. The week crawled toward my birthday like a funeral procession. I tried to remain productive, firing off applications, polishing my portfolio. But rejection notices accumulated faster than I could delete them. My checking account dropped below 3 figures. Every footstep in the corridor made me jump, anticipating the eviction notice. By Friday, insomnia had set in. Sarah found me at 3 a.m., illuminated by blue screen light. "Eve, sleep," she urged gently. "I can't. If I pause, the panic sets in." "About the money?" "About the dinner." "Then pretending life is flawless while I drown." She massaged my neck. "Then make this the final time they treat you like an accessory." I didn't grasp her meaning then, but the phrase stuck. Saturday arrived, crisp and biting. I stood before my wardrobe, debating 3 pathetic choices. Jeans, too worn. A suit jacket missing a button. And a navy sheath I bought years ago for interviews. I picked the dress. It pulled slightly at the waist. On the train ride downtown, I observed the commuters, tourists pointing, lovers intertwining fingers, a child dropping a pretzel. I resented the simplicity of their problems. The restaurant glittered with modern art and polished steel. My parents were already ensconced when I walked in. Mother in emerald satin. Father in a bespoke charcoal suit. The table sparkled with crystal I couldn't afford to touch. "Happy birthday, darling." Mom air-kissed my cheek. Her fragrance chemical and sharp. Dad grinned. "You look fatigued." Rough week. Lost the job, I stated flatly. He nodded dismissively. These things occur. You will rebound. They immediately pivoted to anecdotes. About their vineyard tour. The Rover's new sound system. A remodel of the guest patio. My presence evaporated in their monologue. I watched the entrance, tallying the seconds. I was the guest of honor, yet I felt like furniture in their stage play. Then the heavy doors swung wide. A wave of murmurs rippled through the patrons as my grandfather entered. Robert Hart, silver fox, imposing, every movement calculated. The manager practically tripped over himself to guide him. My mother's smile twitched. Dad? What brings you here? She squeaked, pitch climbing. Celebrating my granddaughter, naturally. His gaze locked on mine. Happy birthday, Evelyn. He embraced me, solid, genuine warmth, and I inhaled fully for the first time that evening. I didn't know you were in town, I said. Wild horses wouldn't stop me. He took the seat beside me. Requested a scotch, neat, and engaged in pleasantries. But there was a razor-sharp undertone in his diction. Like he held a hand of aces nobody else could see. Then he grinned at me, hoisted his drink, and dropped the nuclear bomb. The amber liquid caught the chandelier light as Grandpa raised the glass. So, Evelyn, he said, tone breezy, how do you plan to utilize your $3.4 million trust? The atmosphere disintegrated. I heard my own pulse before the quiet registered. I blinked. Once, twice. What trust? Every utensil froze. My mother's facade fractured like dropped china. My father's Adam's apple bobbed as if he'd swallowed a razor. My grandfather's demeanor remained icy. The fund I established at your birth. Your parents were instructed to transfer control upon your 25th year. My mother let out a manic laugh. Oh, Dad, you are confused. There was, Victoria, he interjected softly. Don't. It was the first time I had ever seen her paralyzed. He signaled the captain. Private lounge. Now. Minutes later, we were sequestered in a back room. Appetizers abandoned, champagne warming. The door sealed with a heavy thud that felt permanent. Inside, the temperature seemed to drop. Grandpa's executive aide, Julia, was waiting, laptop primed. A man in a pinstripe suit stood guard. Marcus Thorne, his litigator. Brief and brutal, Grandpa commanded. I require transparency. Marcus opened a binder. Sliding a dossier across the mahogany. Miss Hart, this is the ledger established in your name. Initial seed, 1 million. Current valuation with market compounding. Should sit near 3.4 million. My hand trembled reaching for the sheet. Should be, he nodded somberly. As of 9 a.m., the balance is 200,000. Grandpa raised a palm. The room fell silent. Enough. He nodded to Julia. Read the withdrawals. She projected her voice, clinical and cold. Mortgage satisfaction, 450,000. Vehicle acquisitions, 2 Range Rover autobiographies, 280,000. Estate landscaping, 320,000. Seed capital for Eleanor Hart Interiors, 500,000. Status, insolvent. Every item felt like a punch to the gut. Then she hesitated. Acquisition of waterfront property in the Hamptons, 1.8 million. Title currently held by Richard and Eleanor Hart. I stared at them. A vacation home. My father's face went slack. It was a portfolio diversification. It was embezzlement. Grandpa corrected softly. From your own child. Nobody breathed. The only audio was the hum of the HVAC system. Finally, Grandpa extended his hand. Surrender the keys. Mom's eyes darted to her tote. She stalled, then fished out a keychain, 2 brass keys and a fob. Her fingers vibrated as she placed them on the wood. Grandpa slid them to me. These belong to you. 2 years overdue. They were still warm from her grip when I touched them. My keys. My sanctuary. The life they had hidden from me. Mom began to weep, soft, rehearsed whimpers. Please, Dad, stop. We are family. Family does not loot from family, he retorted. You will be served by my firm in the morning. They exited the room sluggishly, as if the gravity had increased. The latch clicked, and the room felt lighter, yet hollow. Grandpa turned to face me. Evelyn, the audit is comprehensive. They face criminal liability. But the choice to prosecute, that is yours. I gazed at the keys, the metal biting into my palm. For decades I had scrapped for their validation. Now I held evidence that their affection had a price. I need a moment, I whispered. Take it, he replied. But understand this, they were preparing to flee. Julia located one-way tickets. To Brazil purchased. Tuesday. My chest constricted. They attended dinner knowing this was the final goodbye. He nodded. And they smiled in your face while doing it. That night, I departed the venue with the keys in my coat and a hurricane in my heart. Outside, the city lights smeared through the mist. Sarah was awake when I returned. When I recounted the events, she looked at me like I was describing a horror film. They robbed you, she breathed. Your own flesh and blood. Not just cash, I said. Years. I stared out at the sleeping skyline, feeling something shatter, and something new harden in its place. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to plead. I was going to reclaim everything, surgically. 3 days post-dinner, I was called to Grandpa's headquarters. A skyscraper that pierced the clouds. I hadn't slept since the revelation. The phrase, planning to flee, looped in my mind. Every time I blinked, I saw my mother's shaking hand releasing the keys. My father's silence that screamed guilt. When I arrived, Julia was waiting in the atrium, poised as ever, tablet ready. They have arrived, she murmured. Robert requested your presence. My gut twisted. Both? She nodded. They came to broker a deal. Broker? The word tasted vile. The lift opened to the penthouse, glass partitions. Italian leather, the scent of cedar and old power. Grandpa sat behind his desk, spine rigid, hands folded. Opposite him sat my parents. Dad looked aged by a decade. Mom attempted a smile, but her lipstick cracked at the edges. Evelyn, Grandpa said, voice steady. Sit. I took the chair facing them. Silence reigned for a beat. The only sound was the antique clock marking time. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. We never intended for it to spiral. We were desperate. Grandpa's tone was glacial. Trying to maintain appearances, Dad corrected. You wouldn't grasp the pressure. I grasp avarice, Grandpa cut in. I built a legacy identifying it. Mom leaned in, tears welling up. We adore you, Evelyn. We plan to inform you eventually. When? I asked. After you liquidated the Hamptons house? Silence. Marcus Thorne stepped up, placing a ream of documents on the desk. The forensic trace is finalized, he announced. Every cent tracked, every asset linked. We have recouped roughly $2 million via seizures and frozen accounts. My father rubbed his temples. $2 million? You didn't recoup it, Marcus said sharply. We did. Through the courts. I watched the tableau from a distance, disconnected. Every lie stripped away, every secret dissected under the fluorescent light. Julia handed me a binder. Inside were photos of their indulgences. The beach house, luxury SUVs, jewelry invoices, cruise itineraries, all financed by my birthright. You should see what they prioritized over you, she said gently. I swallowed bile. This is sufficient for criminal charges? Affirmative, Marcus replied. Grand larceny, fraud, breach of fiduciary duty. 7 to 10 years. Mom gasped. Evelyn, you wouldn't, please. Her voice fractured like a toddler's. But I felt nothing. I didn't do this, I said. You did. My father leaned forward, panic bleeding through his mask. We made errors, but prison? We are your parents. Parents nurture, I said quietly. They don't parasitize. Grandpa turned to me. It is your call, sweetheart. The room spun, the skyline, the documents, the trembling hands. I thought of 27 years of dinners where I smiled through neglect. Of loans paid with instant noodles. Of birthdays where they sent cards but no compassion. I met my mother's gaze. You left me with zero. Now you possess exactly that. The sentence landed like a gavel. Mom's posture collapsed. Dad looked away, jaw working. Grandpa nodded once to Marcus. File the motions. Mom reached across the mahogany, voice vibrating. Dad, please. She is your granddaughter. And I am your daughter. And there is a distinction between biology and integrity, he said. She began to sob, a raw, ugly sound. It wasn't for me. It was for the lifestyle she was forfeiting. As the attorneys finalized the signatures, I walked to the window. The city sprawled below, cranes, traffic, the rhythm of millions of lives. I pressed my palm to the cool glass. For the first time in forever, I didn't feel small. Behind me, I heard Grandpa speak. Keys, deeds, liquid assets, all reverted to Evelyn, effective now. When I turned, Julia handed me a sleek envelope. Your property deeds. The penthouse is fully in your name. I nodded. Thank you. Mom whispered something, barely audible. You will regret this. I looked at her. Truly looked. The woman who taught me to mute my voice, shrink my needs, and tie my worth to their praise. No, I said. For once, I won't. They departed shortly after, flanked by security. The door sealed. The silence that followed wasn't oppressive. It was sterilized. Grandpa stood, walking over. You executed the right decision. I don't feel triumphant, I admitted. Justice is rarely euphoric, he said. But it is mandatory. He squeezed my shoulder, grounding me. You aren't isolated anymore, Evelyn. You never were. That evening, I visited the apartment, the one I'd never been permitted to enter. The Gold Coast penthouse was silent, all chrome and lake views. The concierge knew my name instantly. Mr. Hart indicated you would arrive. When I turned the key, the scent of vanilla and sandalwood hit me. It was staged perfectly, neutral palette, granite islands, art books about architecture, a stranger's life funded by my inheritance. I wandered the rooms, touching the walls, the silk drapes, the proof. On the island, a lease binder, tenant names, deposits. My parents had been collecting rent for years. I sank onto the sectional and laughed, a jagged sound. Then the laughter dissolved into tears. Not sorrow, but purging. Sarah arrived 20 minutes later with Thai food. You are actually here, she whispered, eyes wide. I am home, I said. She scanned the room, grinning. So, how does retribution feel? Quiet, I replied. And heavier than I anticipated. We ate on the floor. Curtains open, just like old times. Through the floor-to-ceiling glass, the lake shimmered with reflections. Somewhere behind me, the keys sat on the counter. A token of everything stolen and everything reclaimed. Before sleep, I texted Grandpa, moved in. Thank you for fighting when I was unable. His reply buzzed a minute later. You always had the fight, Evelyn. You just required the evidence. I stared at the screen until it went black. Proof of their betrayal, and who I had become. A month passed before I could sleep without waking up anticipating another lie to surface. But the legal machine was efficient. My parents' assets, the Rovers, the Hamptons estate, even the country club bonds, were liquidated. The capital flowed back into my ledger where it belonged. They relocated to a budget motel near O'Hare. Grandpa told me quietly. They are remitting restitution. $500 monthly. Court mandated. I felt no joy hearing it. Just equilibrium. I settled into the penthouse. Every morning, mist rolled off the lake like a phantom. I would sit on the terrace with coffee, laptop open, designing again. Clients arrived rapidly, referrals from Grandpa's circle. Startups needing identity. For once, I wasn't scrambling. I was constructing. Sarah visited every weekend. We hung canvas, unpacked crates, made the space authentic. You realize, she said once, chuckling. You could purchase this entire block now. I don't crave more things. I said. Just more serenity. Weeks blurred into months. My name adorned everything, accounts, titles, contracts. But the money didn't settle me. It was the sovereignty over my existence. One evening, Grandpa treated me to dinner. He looked friendlier but unburdened. You did what I couldn't, he told me. You drew a boundary. I smiled. You showed me where to draw it. That night, driving home through the loop, I passed the restaurant where the bomb dropped. Through the pain, diners were toasting, oblivious to how quickly a bloodline can sever over gold. I didn't pause. Some chapters must remain shut. Ultimately, I learned that DNA is not a contract for loyalty. My parents stole my timeline and labeled it parenting. But I took it back, brick by brick, quietly, legally, totally. Now when I gaze over the water, I don't see the loss. I see the reconstruction. If you have ever been knifed by the ones you trusted most, remember this, you can restart, stronger than before. And if stories like mine resonate, stick around. The next one might feel uncomfortably close. Hit subscribe and don't look back.